Welcome to Landscape Management Network's newsletter. This one's on efficiency and waste. Every landscape company could be doing better. Just ask any owner. They'll be certain that they could be doing a lot better with the right systems and people in place. Using some simple numbers, we're going to show you how you can actually measure your company's efficiency and calculate how much waste actually exists in your company. Warning, for many it's a scary sight, but it is also real life. And if you can measure and improve the waste and inefficiency in your company, then there's really no limit to the success you can achieve in this industry. So what is waste? Well, waste is every lost billable opportunity in your business. It's time and fuel spent going back to the shop to get forgotten tools and materials. It's estimates that don't fully recover the job costs, your company's overhead, and the profit you need. It's work we end up doing for free because we didn't fully cover all the owner's expectations during the sales process. It's work done incorrectly or having to get redone for warranty reasons. It's equipment downtime because we're waiting for parts and repairs. It's missed billing because the work in the field didn't get communicated properly back to the office. And there's 1,000 other ways that our companies incur costs that don't get charged back to our customers. And although some waste is unavoidable, it's really important to realize that all waste is lost billable opportunity, so it really stings. Let's say, for example, your crew spends 2.5 man-hours a week chasing after tools or materials that could have been better organized in the first place. Now, if that crew works 36 hours of the year, they've wasted now 90 billable man-hours. And a company with 4 crews has now lost 360 billable man-hours to waste. If you replace the hours wasted on these mistakes with hours spent working on projects, you'd be able to complete 360 more hours of sales that year. And if your billable rate was $50 an hour, that's almost $20,000 in pure profit. It's pure profit because you're paying for those hours already right now. They're just not productive or billable. They're hours wasted. Instead of making mistakes, we could have gotten through those jobs that we're getting paid for 360 hours sooner, which means we'd have another 360 hours of billable opportunity to sell to new clients who, and this is key, are actually paying us for this time. And don't forget, if you're doing construction jobs, you're also selling materials during this time. There's even more room to increase your sales and profit numbers, because in these 360 found hours, your crews are also installing billable materials. There's no sense getting embarrassed about this, or even worse, sticking your head in the sand. Instead, try getting it out in the open. Have the conversation with your crews. Get out a spreadsheet or a piece of paper and challenge them, honestly, to estimate how many hours get wasted each week, talking on cell phones for personal reasons, or texting, extra long breaks and lunches, redoing work due to poor planning or communication, moving and then removing materials on site, measurement and layout mistakes, washroom and coffee runs, searching for tools and materials in unorganized shops and trailers, waiting for information or instructions, working with the wrong tools or equipment, tolerating underperforming employees on the crews, and extra trips back and forth to vendors or to the shop to pick up stuff that should have been planned earlier and on the truck in the morning. And this list, unfortunately, is pretty much endless. We've done this exercise both with our own crews and in the workshops that we teach other landscapers, supervisors, and foremen. And we've never had a group that couldn't quickly come up with a list of 35 to 50 wastes that happen almost every week. Now, in a column beside this list, ask them to estimate how many average man-hours per week that the crew spends on each waste. Then you need to multiply the number of man-hours per week lost by the number of weeks in the year that this crew works. And then comes the really scary part. Multiply that number by your average hourly rate that you charge your customers per man-hour. The average workshop comes up with about $200,000 in lost billable opportunity per crew per year. And remember, these aren't owners' workshops. These are the employees. Imagine the extra waste that the owners could pile on this list. Office and administration waste, communication problems, procedure waste, lost information. The waste exists, and everybody knows it. But what everybody doesn't fully realize is just how much potential rewards for owners and staff get lost because the business is paying for all this waste. So how efficient is your company? Well, if you don't know, come to an LMN workshop sometime. We're all over North America, and we'll start by helping you build an operating budget for your company, and then we'll use that budget to calculate your company's capacity. That is, how much sales you should be doing. But you can also measure your own company's capacity. It gets measured like this. Add up all your billable job costs. Now, these costs are your company's total expenses spent on field wages, field equipment costs, material costs, and subcontractor costs. These are all the costs that you can bill directly to your customers. You don't include overhead. They're not directly billable. Then you multiply each of these totals by the markup that you add to these costs when you price your estimates. And your markup should include overhead and profit. Now that gives you your capacity. If you build all your company's job costs properly, that's what your sales should look like. But of course, for 99% of us, it isn't. Those wastes that we looked at earlier mean we're paying for costs, but the company is eating them. They're not getting billed to customers. And this comes from mistakes when estimating quantities, especially the time that it takes to complete our jobs, and mistakes when pricing our work, especially when you don't have a pricing system that for sure covers your costs and your overhead and your profit. And it also comes from field operations that repeat the same simple mistakes month after month after month. In our business management workshops, we calculate the attendees' efficiency, and everyone's numbers kept private, of course, but the industry average efficiency rating is just a little over 60%. That is, most landscape contractors' actual sales are only about 60% of their actual capacity. Let's put that into perspective. If the average company sells about $800,000 worth of work in a year, that same company actually has the capacity to do about $1.3 million in sales, and get this, without really increasing costs. Can you imagine how profitable the average company would be if they'd estimated their quantities correctly? If they had a pricing system that made sure their labor, equipment, materials, and subs were priced correctly? And if they could eliminate the waste, mistakes, and downtime in the field and replace them with billable hours? How can you possibly expect to achieve real, meaningful profit when there's hundreds of thousands of dollars flying out the door in waste and inefficiency? Some waste, of course, is unavoidable. But don't forget, the prices that you charge, especially on your labor, need to be enough to compensate for that known waste. So time spent doing things like shop cleanup and safety meetings and drive time, the downtime that we know, these costs should be getting covered in your hourly rates. Now, if you don't really know if you have those costs built in, or you don't know how much downtime you have built into your labor pricing, time to ask yourself why not, because you're more than likely selling your company short. You shouldn't be dealing with known waste here. There should be a buffer in your labor pricing to cover that. This 60% problem is unknown waste that's killing our company's profits, and it's also hurting our industry. Remember when we talked about the exercise where the crews estimated that on average about $200,000 per year per crew was wasted on unbilled mistakes and lost opportunity? It's not so unrealistic now. In fact, if you look at that and compare it to what we just calculated when the owners do the budget, that number is just about right. It doesn't matter how you calculate it, whether you add up the costs of what you're actually billing versus what you should be billing, or if you add up the costs and lost opportunity and the hours of waste, the two answers come up almost the same, which means you're onto something. Once you know your waste, your mind's got to instantly turn to the obvious question: what can we do about it? The answers, as we know, are all around us. They're at our shop, they're at our job sites, they're in our office, in our estimates. The waste is even built into our designs. But right now, let's cover the 5 most common sources of waste as we've seen them in our business. The first is unbilled hours. You have to get tough on this one. It's a real killer. Hours where field staff are on payroll, but hours that aren't getting billed to customers are big problems for our companies. These hours are usually due to one of 3 main reasons. The estimator didn't factor enough hours into the job. The crews took longer than estimated because of poor time and job management. Or the rates you're charging out for your crews per hour aren't enough to cover the non-billable hours spent in company meetings, prep time, cleanup time, drive time, and mistakes that are inevitable in this industry. So how do you fix these problems? There's no quick video for that one. That's a full-length feature film. But here are some quick solutions that have had the biggest impact in our company. Start by reviewing your estimates with your foreman before you deliver a price to your client. Somebody who would or could at least build the job has to buy in. They can often find hidden costs, buried in things like access or order of operations and the logistics of executing the plan. On the flip side, they can also help value engineer the job. They can find small changes, especially in the design, that can make the job faster, more cost-effective, and ultimately more profitable. And we have to hand the crews the job plan for every job. That's the quantity of hours and equipment, materials, and subs that have been estimated for each phase. If your crews don't know the plan, or if there isn't a real plan, then you've got to be crazy to expect that their execution of the job is going to match what the estimator was thinking by coincidence. They might reduce quality to get the job done on time, or they might deliver more than expected, and the job's going to end up going overtime. But rarely are they going to deliver the time and the quality if they don't know the expectations of whoever sold and estimated the job. And finally, don't base your hourly rates on industry numbers. Know your numbers. Work out what your crew is actually costing you in wages, downtime, overtime, labor burden, and how much overhead and profit you need to recover. LMN's estimating software is based entirely around this concept, knowing and charging enough for these costs, because it's so critical to the success of your business. The next big waste is estimates that don't actually cover your costs. And we see this one all the time in workshops. Contractors, especially landscape contractors, often just don't charge enough to cover all their costs, their overhead, and the desired profit. This is most especially true of companies and segments of the green industry that end up pricing work by the square foot or by the linear foot. Every estimator should calculate an estimate price based on the cost of the work, plus markups for overhead and profit. And since every company has different levels of sales and overhead and profit, the only numbers you should be using for these markups are your own. And every contractor also needs a repeatable pricing system that calculates the cost for the job and adds this appropriate overhead and profit specific for the company that's bidding the work. With a system, every estimator is pricing every job the way it needs to be priced to make a profit. And this is just far too important to just work hard and hope your prices are enough. A third big waste is estimates that weren't planned enough. And this is a killer, especially in spring when we're rushing around. Estimates might be priced right, but they simply don't have enough hours or costs built in. Did the estimator carefully review the design and get any missing or incorrect information? Did they remember to factor the time required for site prep and access? Did they factor enough time for material staging and relocation? Did they capture all the material costs required to do the work? And importantly, did they explain any and all exclusions or conditions to the customer so that we don't end up doing free work at the end of the job just to make sure we get paid or to preserve goodwill because there was a communication breakdown on a point? In the heat of the season, it's easy to rush estimates out the door, but spending an extra 30 minutes to an hour reviewing your estimates thoroughly is going to save or earn your company thousands of dollars each year. If your crews are working for free because you didn't have enough hours or information when we priced the job, that's waste and it's lost billable opportunity. Another big one is not billing for equipment costs. So many contractors are giving away their equipment on their jobs because they own it. Every workshop, there's more than one company who says, I don't have any equipment payments. I own all mine. And sure enough, they don't end up factoring equipment costs into their jobs. But just because you don't have any payments doesn't mean your equipment is free. You've got fuel costs, repair costs, licensing costs, insurance costs, but worst of all, you're going to need to replace that equipment one day. And who's going to pay for it? Your customers or your past profits? If you're incurring equipment costs and not making sure those costs are getting passed to your customers, it's more waste and it's more lost opportunity. And finally, there's the lack of systems. Systems are the glue that ties everything in the company together. They make sure that everyone knows the who, what, when, where, and whys of everything that needs to get done. But small to medium-sized businesses struggle with systems. They're big enough that they need systems for consistency and predictability across the company, but they're often too small to have the time to pull them all together. But systems start a good cycle. The more systems you have, the better your execution will be, And the better your execution, the less problems you're going to have. When you have less problems, you have more time to develop more systems. And the cycle continues, making your company better and better each year. Some of the key systems landscape contractors need to focus on include sales processes to ensure repeatably high closing rates, estimating processes to ensure that no matter who's pricing the estimate, your company's job costs and pricing are consistent, accurate, and most especially profitable. There's job management processes. These ensure that the crews see the job the same way the estimator did and manage their time, equipment, and material costs according to the estimate. And then finally, there's paperwork and billing processes. These ensure that costs get tracked accurately and that all billable work actually gets billed. It's amazing how many companies do the work but lack the necessary processes to ensure that all the work gets back to the office and invoiced to the customer every single time. Looking at your efficiency on a company level can be crushing. Nobody wants to see a number like 500,000 just vanishing before their eyes. On the other hand, it opens your eyes to the immense opportunity that most of us already have within our businesses. And as you start to work the bugs out of your company and drive out waste and drive up efficiency, you're going to start seeing really meaningful results in your bottom line. And with those results come more money to invest in better equipment and overhead infrastructure, more money to spend on hiring and retaining the best staff in the industry, and more money to reward the owner for their risk and investment in the company. Better yet, getting more efficient is like getting a gift that keeps on giving. As you increase your efficiency, you're increasing your productivity. You're driving costs down and sales up. Your crews are getting through their work faster. If your crews are faster, you don't need to bid as many hours into your jobs. And if you're bidding less hours than your competitors, then you're probably outpricing them. But, and this is key, without sacrificing profit. In fact, while you're outpricing them, your profits are likely growing. And as you sell more work, your profits improve even further, which gives you capital for better equipment, more overhead and technology, and better people. And with those, you can decrease waste even further, which in turn starts a new and even bigger cycle of improvement all over again. So go ahead. We challenge you to give it a shot. Calculate your company's efficiency and see how much opportunity you have in your business for better sales, better profits, and better rewards for owners and employees alike. And if you need help, check us out at www.landscapemanagementnetwork.com. Our budgeting and estimating software automatically calculates your efficiency based on your company's numbers and calculates the pricing system that you need to recover your overhead and profit. And if you're still skeptical, then make sure you come out to a Landscape Management Network business management workshop in your area. We've partnered with Caterpillar Equipment and many state and national landscape associations to bring you a business management workshop like none other out there. Here, every attendee builds a budget specific for their company, and then we walk you through the process of examining your capacity and how to use your pricing system to estimate and execute jobs for profit. Take a look at our events page on our website for information about events in your area. That's it for this video, but check back often for videos just like it. Landscape Management Network, helping great landscape contractors run great landscape businesses.